Hey everybody, how we doing today? In today's video, we're going to be breaking in my brand new Suzuki 2.5 horsepower outboard motor. This is the DF 2.5 S4, which is the newest model out. Got the 5-year warranty, which was a major buying factor for me. I'm going to be using this for my new offshore rig. So the break-in procedure is basically a 10-hour long. What it's going to be is we're going to do the initial startup, run it at idle for about 15 minutes. I'm going to just do that in a water bucket, have it controlled here. Then after that, the next hour and 45 minutes, I'm going to take it on the kayak and just run it from idling, putting around up to half throttle, and then back down again, half throttle, back down, and just from basically half throttle down to idle. And that'll be for an hour 45-minute period there. Once that's completed, then we're going to do 1 hour of up to 3/4 throttle. So again, we'll be running up to 3/4, run it for a few minutes, bring it back down, keep all those RPMs in that range there for that hour. Okay, and then the final of the 10 hours is going to be all the way to full throttle, but with a maximum of 5-minute extended full throttles. So again, just taking up the full throttle, run it for a few minutes, and then bring it back down, take it down to idle, and just run through the whole bandwidth there and just get this thing thoroughly broken in. Once that 10 hours done, and then that's basically the break-in. Initially, what it's going to, the setup is that it comes with lower end oil, but it needs 7 ounces of motor oil and gas, and you're pretty much ready to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the 15-minute of idle break-in, and then I'm going to do an oil change, where they don't recommend an oil change until after the 10-hour break-in. I'm going to do it after the 15, and then again at the 10-hour. The reason for that is when they're assembling this is you got everybody's grubby hands on it. You're in a manufacturing plant in Thailand, and you have all those dust and metal flakes and everything sticking onto the motor. And on top of that, that first few seconds, first minute of it running is all metal to metal, where the metal to metal is basically wearing themselves together and getting smooth. So what I want to do after that 15 minutes is flush that oil out. There's no oil filters in these, so it's just change the oil, and that's how you basically keep it clean. So I'm going to do that at 15 minutes, and then again at the 10-hour, and then after that go to a more normal cycle there. But today, let's get this thing liquid up and fired up. Now, before I get started, I am just going to verify that there is oil in the lower unit. It does say it comes supplied already ready to go, but it doesn't hurt to double check. So you have one screw down on the bottom for draining and filling, and then this is actually the level. So this is your full level. So if you take this screw out, the oil level should be right to the bottom of that screw hole. So that's what I'm going to check now. Now I've got that screw out. I've just got a little zip tie. Run that down in there, and just to make sure I've got oil, which I do, so we're good to go there. Next, we're going to add some engine oil here. I've got some actual Suzuki brand 1040. This is 4-stroke oil. One thing you have to remember is this has that 5-year warranty, but you have to make sure you follow the instructions. One of those instructions is that you have to document the steps of maintenance that you're taking with it. So on the owner's manual that you'll receive, it's got a chart for when things need to be checked, changed, and etc. When you read the warranty, it also states that you have to track it by the date, as well as keep receipts for items that you're purchasing to verify that you're keeping up with those maintenance standards. Otherwise, you can go down to a service center and not have that information, and they'll say, well, you voided your warranty because you didn't follow instructions. So very important. So bought this from the dealership, kept the receipt with my actual purchase receipt and the manual, and I'm just going to keep that in a file all together there. But let's go ahead, and we're supposed to add 7 ounces, but this has a little check window, and we just need to fill it up so it hits about halfway. All right, so they got this little yellow cap here. Just unscrew that. Keep this to the side. And then we're gonna fill it up, and then right below it is our little visible window there, our fill window, and you'll see a little red dot in the center of it, and that's what we're gonna target. All right, you can see the oil levels right up to the red dot. One of the things you do not want to do is overfill these motors. You can actually harm them quite a bit if you overfill it. It'll create a big old frothy mess in the motor, and then you'll actually starve your motor of oil. So just go to the line, make sure that you're vertical, and you should be good to go. So just put the cap back on, and then we just need to add some gas, and we're ready to go. Next up, just need to fill it up some gas. Now that we've added fuel, we've added oil, I want to take the cover off, just take a quick look, make sure that we don't have any leaks. Be looking around the valve cover, around the head for oil along the bottom, make sure nothing's dripping, as well as around the carburetor, make sure there's no fuel dripping down below. One thing about the initial startup is you have to remember, because of the emissions on these little Suzukis, they have this manual, well, it's actually a vacuum actuated fuel pump. So the way it works is the gas tank's in the back and the filler is on the bottom, and it has to pump the gas all the way up this hose to what's called the fuel pump. It's not a mechanical, it's just a vacuum actuated. And then once it goes through there, then it gets pushed down this fuel line back to this side and then into the carburetor. This is the vacuum line that pulls the suction that spins the fuel pump and gets that fuel going in through the system. So when you're first starting up, these are definitely not one and done. If your fuel lines are empty, it's going to take a few pulls for that fuel to get pulled into the fuel pump and then gravity fed. Once it's started and run, that fuel will be in these lines and in the fuel pump, and then it'll be ready to go, and then it's a one shot and go. So just keep that in mind. All right, I've got my little PCV outboard stand there, bucket, fill it with water there. I've got a rock underneath the bucket so it keeps the water inlet for the motor below the bucket line. So once that fills up, then we'll start cranking and fire this guy up. All right, bucket's filled. Gonna turn the vent on for the gas. Turn the gas on. Make sure that we're neutral. Pull the choke. Tighten this up. This engine stand is a bit more flimsy than my other one where I usually do my fire ups, but I think we'll be okay. Hopefully last 15 minutes. Otherwise I'll swap it up. All right, let's see if we can get this thing fired. Tighten up the throttle here so it stays in the start position. Give it a couple of pulls. Okay. Oh, what do you know? We got fire first shot. Push the choke in. And we're just going to keep it at idle speed, just so it's just barely running but smooth. Make sure that it's peeing correctly, and it is. And give it about 15 minutes. All right, 15 minutes is expired, so I'm going to go ahead and just shut the fuel off and let it run through the fuel in the system. I've been kind of just putting my hand on and just getting a hand temperature, making sure it's not overheating, but we're all good there. So I'm going to let that run until it kills itself, and then next step is do an oil change. All right, to change the oil, very easy. Right underneath the handle, you'll see an opening in the plastic with a big headed screw there with the Phillips head. That's the oil drain. So you're just going to unscrew that and then the oil is just going to drain out, so you can just have a container below you here. But let's get this drained. All right, let's crack this open. Right there it goes. Screw and screw and screw. All right, and there we go. Looks beautiful and clean, but I can't emphasize how important it is to just go ahead and do the quick oil change after the first 15 minutes, because this oil change is full of the most contaminants, and then you don't want to run it for 10 hours before you change it out. That first 15 minutes, that's where all that wear metal to metal is going to happen. It's going to flush out all the ports, all the oil ports there, and that's where all those contaminants are going to be in this oil change. So I'm just going to let it just drip out for 10-15 minutes, and then we'll fill it back up, and we're ready to go on to the next step. All right, we have got the brand new Suzuki 2.5 all loaded up, ready for our next stage of break-in. So we did the 15 minutes at idle. So we have an hour 45 minutes of from idle to about half throttle, just anywhere in that window there for an hour 45 minutes, and then that'll be our stage 2. So yeah, let's go get puttering. Now, one of the things I highly recommend, especially when you get a new motor or when you get maybe a used motor and you got it running really good, is to do a couple of things so you know you don't get gauges with these, so you don't have a water temp, oil pressure, any of that. So you have to kind of rely on your experiences. So this is a good time, especially with a new one, is to check a few things and kind of get an idea of what they should be like when it's correct. Then when you check them and you're out in the water, you can kind of feel check them and know when things are wrong just by the sense of what you've experienced in the past. So one of the things I'd recommend right off the bat is to do a finger compression check, and all that entails is pull the electronics, pull the spark plug, put your thumb over it, and then pull the cord a few times, just not real fast like you're starting it, but just pull it out slowly and feel the compression both on the intake and the exhaust, so you get an idea of how much compression there should be to your thumb, and that'll give you a good idea. Because I've heated up the motor, got real hot, and then I could tell actually by just pulling the starter, but I could also tell that by putting my thumb over the starter that something was wrong there. Also did it when I had a sticky valve, same deal, it wouldn't start. Took the spark plugs out, put my thumb over it, and I could tell that there was no compression because I couldn't feel anything, and then I knew it was probably a valve was stuck open, which it was. So that's one of the tests I would recommend doing before you take it out for a long ride. All right, to start, got to open up the vent. You can check to make sure you've got gas, turn your fuel on, make sure you're in neutral, pull the choke out, and give it a little bit of gas to the little starter point anywhere in the yellow there. I usually give it a tug to get the compression, so it's real hard there. Pull through that until it gets easier, and just give it a little pull there. Get it fired up, then you can start pushing in the choke, and that should be nice idling there. Got a good pea stream. The other check, once it's warmed up and you've got it nice and toasty, the running temperatures, put your hand and feel everything. I primarily do is I put my hand right underneath it, touch the bolts, the plastic, and the metal plate underneath here where the motor sits, and you can get an idea of the temperature range that is safe for your motor. So one time you're running and you put your hand underneath there and it's screaming hot, you know you're overheating, and you want to check your water source, make sure it's not plugged, make sure it's peeing right, or something else is wrong. But I do that all the time, especially when I go up to A to B. I touch to make sure it's peeing right, and then I go underneath here to feel the temperatures. I don't touch the top very often because the sun will heat this up, so it's not necessarily the motor, but you can tell when it's the sun heat versus your motor overheating by touching that. And the other thing I do is I feel the exhaust that are pushing out of the ports here. You can see a little bit of water coming out, but you could feel that, and it shouldn't be screaming hot. But those are the checks that I do without having any gauges. You want to give it plenty of warm-up time, especially when you're breaking it in. So I'm going to give it a good 5 minutes plus, just at idle, not in gear, just so everything's warmed up. I've only got 15 minutes on idle so far, so we're still in that break-in period. That's very important, so I want to be very chill with it. So we're just going to sit here and just let it idle. All right, let's kick this guy in gear, and nice and smooth. Again, we're just doing idle up to half throttle, but for the first 15 minutes or so, I'm just going to leave it at idle and putter around. Now, when you're doing this initial break-in, you don't want to stay outside of it. Once you've done the idle break-in and you start going to the quarter throttle, half throttle, full throttle, you don't want to stay in one range for too long. You want it to kind of go up, sit for a little bit, and then go down a little bit, go all the way down, come back up, and just keep changing things so it doesn't create any wear patterns right away. So you want to hit the full range. All right, I've been running for a little bit, so it's warm to the touch. It's not like super hot, but my other motors are the same thing. They never get to the point where you can't touch them. Sometimes these bolts will get a little bit warm because they bolt into the block, but really they're not like scorching, burn your skin or anything. Same with water temp. Exhaust pumping out is not overly hot. Plastic underneath is just cool to the touch. Just got a little bit of warmth to it. And the top is a bit hot, but black plastic in the sun is just gonna heat up. So we're looking good. Make sure the emergency throttle stop works. Just press the button. Or if you just pull on the lanyard and the pin comes out, then the button will shut off and it should turn your ignition off. But that looks good. Warm starts, just make sure you're out of gear. Shouldn't need to use the choke since it's already warmed up. Give it a little bit of gas right at the beginning. Feel that compression. Push through it, just past it. And we're good to go. All right, we're just wrapping up the hour and 45 minutes of idling and then running up to half throttle and not doing more than a couple of minutes at half throttle and then backing down again, trying to cover that whole wide range from idling up to half throttle. And then to break it up by shutting it down, letting it cool off some, firing it back up, in gear, out of gear, and just kind of warming the motor up. Stage 3 will be similar, but for an hour we're gonna do that, plus go up to 3/4 throttle. So same deal, idle, go up to half, come back down, run up to 3/4 for a few minutes, come back down, shut the motor off, fire it back up, in gear, out of gear, and just kind of go through the full range for that third hour there. And then after that, the final 7 hours is basically the same thing with the addition of full throttle, but with no more than 5 minutes at full throttle at a time. But basically the same thing we're doing, except you can go to full throttle, run it for a few minutes, and then come back down, maybe do some 3/4, do some half, do some idling, and just keep doing a full range there. And like I said, it's best not to try to do everything all at once, because you do want to have this cool down and then warm back up. You want that the gears go in gear, out of gear as much as possible, because that'll break those in as well. The only variances, like I say, stick to the recommendations. They're recommended for a reason, but the only thing I do kind of go against is that initial oil change after the first 15 minutes of just in idle, out of gear, just in a bucket, that 15 minutes of break-in, and then changing the oil. I have a feeling the marketing department kind of overtook the actually engineering department in that regards, and say, no, you can't tell people that they have to change the oil after using their motor for 15 minutes. People will think there's something wrong with it. But if you deal with motors at all, you know that break-in is where there's going to be the most amount of contaminants from when the assembly takes place. Then you're going to have all those metal dusts from the metal to metal when it's breaking it in, or metal to plastic, or plastic to plastic. When things are just starting to rub up for the first time, those clearances aren't perfect and they have to wear together, and that wear together causes a lot of contaminants. And these motors don't have oil filters in it, so it's not like a car where you could change the oil filter and that catches everything. Everything in the oil there circulates through that motor and just keeps circulating. Only way to get those contaminants out is to change the oil. So hugely important. Change that oil at that 15 minutes, and then I'm going to do it again after we've done the 10-hour break-in, do a change, and then I'll start my regular cycle after that. So very important. Plus, I bought this thing for the 5-year warranty, so make sure you're getting authorized oil. I'm getting the Suzuki 4-stroke oil. It's $10 at the Suzuki store, and that gets you 2.5 oil changes, so it's not too bad there. But keep your receipt, and that'll make sure your warranty's intact. Document when you do those oil changes as well as the break-in, so you have that proof when you have a problem, you need to take it to a dealership. You have your documents that, hey, everything's in order, I did everything, all the maintenance I was supposed to do, and here's the date, here's the receipts, and they can't deny you because of that. So extremely important. The only thing I would recommend too is put a date on your calendar of 6 months to a year. Undo the 4 bolts that hold the power head to the middle unit there, and pop this head off. Okay, drain the oil, 4 bolts off, smack it, it should just release. Put it back. Well, before you put it back, put some good anti-seize on the shaft and on that coupler. Okay, pack it full, put it together, 4 bolts, and then you don't have to worry about it for another year. But if you don't do that, okay, and you try and it doesn't work and you're still in warranty, take it in, tell them you want your water pump changed, and in order to do that, they have to pop the head off, separate it from the lower unit, and they're not going to be able to, so they're going to have to do the ripping out and fixing and repairing all the parts you damaged getting it apart. So very important to do. So if you're coming down to the end of your warranty, at the minimum, take advantage of doing that. You don't have to tell them that you tried separating it, because it's just not going to come out. You just put the 4 bolts back, you're not going to be none the wiser. Just tell them, hey, I want to do a normal servicing, and they're not going to be able to take that apart. And if they say they do it, tell them you want to see that water pump impeller to verify it, and then when you get it home, you should be able to take those 4 bolts off, pop that head off, because they'll have to have done it. If you still can't, then go back, say, hey, I know you guys didn't do it, because there's no way to get that head off. But very important there. But anyways, that's kind of the break-in. I still got another 7-8 hours to go, but no big deal, kind of boring, same stuff. I'll do a couple of fishing trips with it, maybe do a run out to the reef, and then we'll have this guy broken into. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I will see you next video. Bye. And don't forget your fresh water wash down when you get home. Gotta clean out that salt water if you're gonna make it last 5 years.